Welcome to the Fiscally Awesome Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Gardner, co-founder and CEO of Hiline. Today on the podcast, we have Em Daigle, the founder of OTTO-MATES, which is a really cool online community focused on automation in the accounting world. So really good conversation, and let's get into it. Okay. Em, welcome to the Fiscally Awesome Podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Matt. I appreciate it.
It is going to be a very fun episode. I am an accountant running an accounting company, and we live and die. How do we automate ourselves out of accounting hell every single day? So this is going to be, we don't even need a script to do this. We could just nerd out for as long as we have. But before we get into that, maybe just start with a little bit of a background about yourself and OTTO-MATES. Talk to us about like your backstory and what you're doing now.
Yeah, I will take you back to when there were the big five accounting firms. So I started back at Arthur Andersen, so way back in the day. So I have a finance and accounting background, just like yourself, spent a number of years both in public accounting, and then I went into industry as well. So I get to hold a number of different accounting roles there. In about, I guess it was 2010 or so, I actually transitioned more into the tech side of accounting. It was when subscription and SaaS, although it had, it existed, but all of the tech companies were trying to figure out how to use it as a go-to-market methodology. And of course, the back office was known as the pains at that point to be able to, or to say, we can't handle that. We don't know how to recognize that revenue, that sort of thing. So I ended up starting a consulting business to try and help those companies, my clients, try and figure out how to do that, not just from a pricing and packaging perspective, but also on the back end, how to automate that so that the answer wasn't, no, we can't do that. And instead it was, yes, and let me help you figure out all the best parts of it. I did that for a number of years, got to meet a number of great vendors, actually, who had these automation solutions. And so I got to know some of them, one of which was Zuora, and they are a billing and revenue automation vendor. And I went over there actually on the go-to-market side. So I went to the dark side for a little bit, because as accountants, we always look at the go-to-market side and they either spend too much money or they're too creative in what they're trying to sell, all of the things that make accountants less miserable. But I did that. And that was really to try and help them understand their buyers better and to try and figure out what accountants want and need and all of that. So really enjoyed it. It was more of a strategy go-to-market role, I'll say, just to keep it safe. But I got to do that. And as part of that, though, I really realized that accounting and finance professionals do not want the hard sell. I mean, none of us do, but from the accounting perspective, you're not going to call an accountant and tell them they have a problem that they don't already know they have, and you're not going to be able to understand their problems unless you truly have come from that world or you've been educated in some way to learn it. And so it was really about trying to create these trusted relationships. So part of me was thinking there's got to be a community feel where these vendors can show what they can do, but in a way where then the finance and accounting professionals can really get together and figure out what works and what doesn't. And so that's what led me to OTTO-MATES. It is a bit of a play on words, I guess, but we are a community of accounting and finance professionals. We've got a little over 1,000 now. It's been fun. It's been a year, but we focus entirely on all things automation and AI. So it's really meant to be a safe space where it's neutral for all of these finance and accounting professionals to really learn about automation and AI, but without getting sold to. So there's no sales pitches. It's very much just practitioner-led and all about collaboration.
Love it. I love your background too. And the accounting community is very guarded, right? They are tough to sell through. And I'm sure we've met many of the same technology companies and partners. It is always like the number one thing that they're like, how do we get through the accounting channel, increase velocity, build trust? I love that you're doing it this way because they do seek assurance and confidence from their peers. And I think it starts to move really fast once you get that momentum built up in that cohort of accountants who are forward leading. And I love that you're enabling that with OTTO-MATES. And I love the name.
Thank you.
It took me like a minute when I first saw it. I was like, what?
What is
Because
this
like
thing?
Syracuse, like our mascot was always Otto. I was like, wait, what is,
Oh,
oh, automates. I get it.
okay. So yeah, I have
Automates.
to say I can't really take too much credit. It's a little bit of the dad joke type thing, but also what was it called for a website? I wish there was some great story behind it. So we get to play around with it a little
I
bit.
love it. Okay, so 1,000 people. Who are the early entrants to the community? What types of people are making their way in there?
We've got a little bit of everyone. So we've got a mix of executives in there who are looking at it more maybe from a strategic 30,000-foot perspective. We also have some management level folks that are a little closer to some of those day-to-day pain points that unfortunately individual contributors know probably all too well. And then we've got
Yep.
our individual contributors. So we've got a little bit of everyone in there. But the nice thing about that is with such a mix, there's always somebody that's dealing with the same issues that another is. And so it's not that anyone's showing up with nothing to talk about. It's just making sure they're finding the right people or the right resources and that sort of thing so that these peers can come together, help problem solve, and share some experiences that are real firsthand and not necessarily a reference from a vendor who,
Yeah.
of course, they're going to align you with somebody who's going to say something really great. The nice thing is we've got this community of folks that can say the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then it leaves it up to our members to figure out what they want to do. But it's really a safe space. There's no dumb questions. And it's really just a place for everybody to learn.
Do you have like accounting firms in there? Do you have CFOs in there? Like corporate world? You got like the whole smattering of.
We've got something for everyone. We've got some of the big four in there. We've got some individual, maybe smaller boutique type of accounting firms in there. We do have CFOs and CAOs of some pretty large companies, but then we've got a lot of startups too. I'm grateful that it's grown so quickly because there really is something for everyone in there.
Are people showing up really informed and with strong opinions about automation and AI? Or are they like more, I'm curious, I'm hearing what's going on in the world. Like I want to learn more about what's possible. Or probably both, to be honest.
It's actually both. And the people who have a strong opinion are certainly heard and known in that community as far as like those experts that they know they can go to because they do have a strong voice. I think, though, a lot of the community, I'm going to say, are passive participants. So it's cool. The way we're set up, we have a Slack channel, but we also have something called Circle, which is our community platform. And that allows us to have spaces where we can provide content. And then it's nice because there's an AI agent that sits behind it. So you can interact with all of the content that we share. So the nice thing is, it doesn't necessarily need to be, you have to show up to a webinar to get something from it, or you don't need to talk to somebody necessarily one-on-one if that's not your thing. We alluded to it, but sometimes accounting and finance professionals are a bit more reserved or not necessarily the extroverted group where they're going to feel comfortable going out and asking a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is on the Circle platform, I can see a lot of folks who are in our on-demand resources hub. And it's webinars that we post the replay of. It's maybe a white paper that somebody wrote and that's particularly interesting or relevant. Maybe it's a blog post, but it's really giving everybody access to information. And so in true accounting and finance professional form, I see a lot of people lurking and interacting and viewing a lot of that information, but on their own time. Even with the AI agent, I see people typing in, tell me the difference between vendor A and vendor B. And so it goes through and looks at all of the content that we have out there, all of the comments that people put, and it basically gives a readout. I think that's one of the benefits of AI today is it can really cut through a lot of the time spent on things that used to take a lot of time to go in and read and understand. And so this sort of bubbles it up in a more flat TLDR type output for you.
Very cool. You just built a nice bridge for me to our first topic, which is the automation reality check. Let's start with basic stuff. Like from your seat, what is accounting automation? What does that mean to you?
When I think of it, at its core, it's removing manual, repetitive steps from your workflows. It could range from something very simple like auto categorizing accounting transactions, or maybe scheduling reports to run and be delivered to your inbox, or maybe something more complex like multi-step revenue recognition or intercompany eliminations or consolidated financial statements, something like that. So it's not just about software. I think of it as taking data that's available and using that coupled with some sort of technology that then can help to provide relief in that area where it's traditionally far more manual and repetitive.
Yeah, I think so. This is probably like the 20th time I've said this on this podcast, and I say it all the time inside of our company to anybody who listen. Like, a general ledger is nothing more than a database. So how it gets in the database is really important. And the clearer you get in the database, like the easier it is to actually start to automate more and more of the work. And there's lots of tools out there that you could do that are required to do that. But it's not just about the tools themselves. There's automation and like better processes too. So how much of the time do you think it's actually more about your process sucks versus you should be automating it? And which one should you focus on first?
Oh, great question. Okay, I'm probably going to say this a lot during this episode. It's the age old, it depends. But I will say, I think far too often, you bring up a great point on just like the process itself. We establish those processes because we have an end goal that we need to meet based on the access to either data and or systems that we have. We find a way to get there. Unfortunately, that sort of becomes, that's the way we do it. And that is the process. Doesn't mean that's the way it should be done. So I always think of first looking at that. Is there a better way to do that? And that's the process because that's the way it's always been done, especially if you're new somewhere and you are told that's how it's always been done. Challenge that because that's probably not the best answer. I think even just thinking about how to attack those processes differently is naturally your first step toward automation. Not everything needs to be automated, nor should it really be automated. I'm definitely of the mindset that like this whole AI craziness, it's not going to take away all of our jobs. Could it give us a new path to do things? Yes, but I don't envision a world where there are no longer finance or accounting professionals that
No, I just think
computers are going to do everything for us.
the market eventually will just no longer be willing to pay the same amount of money for things to get done because they become aware that like you should have a better process and better technology to do it more efficiently. And I just expect that now. And I expect you to do more. I'll give you the same wallet share. I'll pay you the same amount of money, but I want more bang for my buck.
Exactly.
So, okay, we talk about process, right? So this is even like true for us, different stages of company, right? We've got a lot of tenured people. We've got a lot of new people, somewhere in between. Like, process is holistic. There is a process to do the thing that everybody needs to do. So I think that's the fundamental starting point. You got to have one process for how to do the thing that everybody knows and understands, because if you don't do that first, you can't automate anything because you're going to be building individual point solutions for every person and every client, and you're not going to be able to maintain it. You're going to lose control of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So will this come up in your community? I'm going to join when we're done so I can see what's going on inside there personally.
Yeah. Yes,
But
please do. It's interesting. There's a few things in pretty much every webinar, every conversation. It points back to the process that is in place versus it's like the as is versus to be. So what does the process look like today? What does it look like if you could make it the most efficient process that it can be? Like truly operationalize it and make it a beneficial process. Just because you have steps 1, 2, 3, 4 today, even if you automated that, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're just automating steps 1, 2, 3, 4. If you automate, it actually may mean that like steps 2 and 3 aren't even necessary anymore. So I think that's part of it. I think the other one that comes up a lot is also the data aspect of it. Typically, like in those 4 steps I just mentioned, typically steps 2 and 3 might be something like export the data, clean it up in Excel, then re-upload the data. There's so
Terrible.
much around data that
Yeah.
also impacts the discussions. That those are the two areas that I hear come up pretty much regardless of the work stream or function at hand, or whether it's frankly AI or
Mhm.
automation.
So what you just said, that's like a deep rooted way of working that accountants have been trained. It's like the concept of I'm going to take it out of the system. I'm going to do something with it. I'm going to put it back in the system or another system.
Mm.
That to me is like a fundamental no-no, right? Like keep it in the system, get it in that system clean and figure out how do I get it in this other system without having to do that? Because that is the part that I think is going away. There's a big ecosystem of integrated technologies. You got to be able to figure that out. You can't take it out and put it back in.
No, no, right. Because who knows where you took it out and who knows where you put it back in. And there's too many entry and exit points.
Yep. So what do you think is the most painful thing that you see all the folks in your community still doing or talking about that you're like, start with that.
Oof, it's data. It
Use data.
really is. I think because both automation and AI amplify whatever data set you have. What I mean by that is if you have a clean set of data, then you will have clean automation. If you have messy data, you will have basically an
No
automated.
automation.
Yeah, right,
Nothing
right.
else.
Bad data, you hear bad data and bad data out, but really there is a lot around that. And now with AI, maybe even learning based on that bad data or that messy data. And so I think the data aspect of it, you mentioned it too, Matt, especially when you've got all of these different integrated solutions now, if you don't have clean data, you do risk somebody pulling data out and putting it back in. You do risk having different data across different systems, which is a
Yep.
huge problem. And then, like I said, all automation and AI will do is just amplify that mess. So I think that's the crux of what everybody's stuck in right now, to be honest.
Yeah, so I'll give you like a relevant example for a company like Hiline, right? We outsource the entire back office, financial operations. We want to be able to do all of it.
Mhm.
It works really well when we bring a solution with a preferred tech stack and like we know how to get everything in. But
Yep.
the more complex the business gets, then you're going to have these adjacent systems like inventory or revenue. Where's your revenue come from? I haven't met a CRM or an inventory warehouse management system that's accurate. So what
Yep.
happens is then people are downloading reports from these systems. They know they're not right. They're manipulating them. And then they're like using them to book a manual adjustment, or they're doing something that only lives in a spreadsheet, but your general ledger and your core system don't agree or talk to each other. And the
Mhm.
problem is with the core system, and it's forcing us to think more and more about, man, like the bills and the ramps and that stuff is actually easy. It's to do this really well, you got to get into these other adjacent systems that are actually really core to the business, but a lot harder to figure out. And a lot of it also comes down to helping our clients understand you got to be better too. There has to be an understanding of the downstream impact of not investing and making sure that this data in this system, which is really important for you, is super dialed.
I couldn't agree more. If you can appreciate and know what good looks like, that's when everything just starts to be that much easier and more cost efficient, right? I mean, I'm sure from your perspective, can you make it work? Yes. But then that takes time, that takes effort, that takes fixing all of those things.
Yeah.
If you're setting up a system and a process based on good data that is consistent, doesn't have a bunch of exceptions, those types of things, you are going to pay far less in the long run for any type of automation, outsourcing, any of that, because it's just going to be that much cleaner for
Yep.
the system, the people, whoever is dealing with that information.
Yeah. And like for us, right? And this is even true for somebody in corporate finance, right? Because even if you sit in a corporate finance seat, you can't really control the CRM. There's things you can't control, other people can. When you manipulate it, you think it's right and it supports this number over here, but like you can't really tie the two systems together, or explain why it's right. You lose people and they immediately start to discredit what you did because Nobody knows what the source of truth is. And I think oftentimes while you may be doing well, but only you know what you did and only you know why it makes sense, everybody else has to understand too.
Yeah. And I think there's something too there, Matt, that you're talking about, which whether it is outsourced or corporate finance, when you don't have a single source of truth for the numbers, yes, it's more costly. Yes, it causes confusion and less efficient. But then also, you can't altogether make informed decisions about how to run the business because you're too busy trying to reconcile the differences or fight about who's
Yeah.
right or try and disprove what somebody else's numbers look like. And so I think there's a lot of benefit that may not have a dollar tied to it per se, but having an aligned view on what that financial output is will help to drive the business be far more efficient, will help you make better decisions about where to invest money or what your growth looks like. All of those things are super important, like at the end of the day.
100%, because it is about building confidence and clarity with all the right people inside the business, because you maybe used the thing that you put in Excel and did the thing to get the number right, but the system you took it from also has like really important and critical KPIs that the business is also relying on to run the business and make decisions. You're basically saying that's not right, this is right, but this is just accounting. It's not actual anything that we can use comfortably. It slows everybody down. So if you do it right, make the investment, get the systems and data right, it unlocks decision-making speed and better decision-making. And I think that's where we're at. Just anything that sits in a spreadsheet, I'm like, man, I got no confidence. I got so many questions already. Where are we starting?
I was going to say, I have a love hate relationship with Excel. I use it for far too many things in my personal life, like a grocery list, which I know sounds insane, but that's the accountant in me. I'll never lose stuff like that. But then I also really despise it for so many reasons, and it can get so unruly. I actually had, for anyone that does know me, I have this story from many years ago when I owned a gigantic spreadsheet, and it was for all the things we've been talking about, cleaning up the data, basically making sure that we can have the right financials at the end of the day and put everything back in. It was everything that I'm saying we shouldn't be doing. And I had to password protect this spreadsheet and I called it Exhell, like EX-HELL. I was like, it's Exhell. Like it's the worst thing in the world because I want nothing more than to break up with it.
Yeah, if Excel's your place you go to get your information, like it tells me there's something broken about the systems that you're using. And I spent many, many years trying to figure out how to get core things like FP&A out of Excel because all you did was create a new reality and this standalone thing that doesn't talk to anything. And you really convince yourself about what's in it.
And there's no checks and balances. All it takes is, I mean, one day my cat like literally walked across the keyboard and I didn't even know what had happened. I know that's a silly example, but so many things were triggered. And this spreadsheet was 21 tabs wide and thousands of rows long. But I didn't know what the heck the cat had done. And to go back and try and figure out what just happened, I mean, it was scary that we had our revenue recognition being calculated in this giant spreadsheet and something like a cat walking across it could bring it to its knees.
Yeah. No, it's always just felt to me like, man, there's too much risk and bad decisions being made because we don't have a good system in place. But it's really hard to do. Like, it's very hard to do it that way. The way that I'm saying I'd like to see us get to is very difficult.
It's why so many folks still are stuck in manual work. It's hard when you think about moving from that, this is how it's always been done, and entering into a process to go through and truly clean up your data, put the right process in place. If that includes technology, like those are not insignificant tasks, especially when day to day you just have to keep things running, right? Like it's hard to take time out because you're already busy enough
Yep.
to then be able to prioritize those types of things.
And I'm talking to you as the founder of a company that's doing this for 450 companies. So I'm thinking about this for them. And I have all this experience doing it. Just like the person running the company is not thinking about this most of the time. And if you just have one big finance job in a corporate environment, they're not thinking about it either. This is why I find what we do really interesting. And it's getting more and more possible, but it's like, yeah, it gets crazy, honestly.
Yeah. I love the fact that you are doing it for 450 companies. Think about the economies of scale that you have to offer though. Like you've seen 450 or more different ways that I bet not one of those is a cookie cutter of the other. Actually, I would put money on that. But you've seen what good looks like. You've seen what bad looks like and where you got it to where it is running efficiently. You've got the ability to take that knowledge that you've built over time and be able to help others who have some form of all different points that you've seen.
That's exactly right. And I've seen it work really well. I've seen the systems that we've built break down. I've seen the system be forgotten and things like drift. And then it's like you got to put it back together. And I've seen technology change and new platforms evolve, and then you got to retool it. So I still feel like for as long as we've been doing this for as many companies we serve, I still feel like we're 50% as good as I would like to see us get in terms of doing this really well, like business back office in a box. And it's always going to evolve, but it's a really hard problem to solve and to make sure is delivered, administered consistently, because it is one big system that
Yeah.
needs constant refinement.
Yeah. And there's not a one size fits all model. It's funny, like in the community, I get the question all the time. They'll come to me and say, I'm a blank, say controller of a blank high growth mid market company. Just throwing some examples out there. My ERP is blank NetSuite. What is the ideal tech stack for me? I wish I had a great answer, but it really isn't, like I said, a one size fits all. There is the right solution for the right problem at the right place and at the right time
Yep.
because you do want your business growing. You do want to outgrow certain systems or you do want to outgrow scenarios because you're growing so much. So that change is a good thing. But you need to be open to and one, understand that it does need to likely change and or evolve, but also that you're willing to do that, right? And take the time to make sure that you are able to have a back end process system team that can handle all of those things as you grow.
Yeah, so for somebody like me, it's like when we run into a system that we can't support or there's a source of data that we can't access, I'm like, that for me, that's my product. That's a product gap. We got to put that on a list. We got to go find solutions that solve the problem
Yep.
for the majority of our clients. Ideally, you're finding 2 to 3 that fit most of the use cases, but that's the constant evolution of the system that we're trying to build. So
Yeah.
it's really fun. So let's talk like some practical advice, right? Because I'm talking about it at a different level of scale. Not everybody is a mid-market high growth company. So if somebody's ready to start thinking about doing this, whether you're running a small accounting firm or you're just got hired as a CFO or a controller for a smaller business that doesn't have all the resources, where do you start?
So I would say look for where you spend the most time. And what I would say is don't necessarily go to the most complex or the biggest issue first. Maybe it's something like invoicing, invoice processing, and AP approvals, right? Maybe there's this email chain that people need to click approve or it goes into an inbox, some sort of alias, and somebody has to go through and manually match something. If you're spending time on tedious, manual, repetitive tasks, those are key points for automation. I think where in that process is it most painful for you? Where are you spending the most time? Because I think some of those low hanging fruits could be big wins in the end. And it's a great way to get started with some of these things without spending a bunch of money, without spinning up a bunch of new systems before you know what you really need to have in place. The cleaning up some of those are some like easy ways that everybody can start to automate the most painstaking parts of their day.
Yep. What are the steps in the thing to get it done?
Yep.
And like building a flow chart of process and sequence. And what are the things I have to do every day that are like driving me nuts? And I just literally need 16 cups of coffee to get through my day. Just put it in a flow chart and then start to think about like what parts of this can I be doing better with technology and how do I automate it? And it's a little gritty to go through and outline all of your different workflows that you're doing, but I think that's a really good place to look.
Yeah. I think it can be so daunting to think about implementing a system, but it doesn't need to come down to that.
I think people think that the most complex things take the most time, which is typically not true. If you add up all of the time you spend and all of your tasks, it's usually the easy stuff that is the majority of time spent.
Yeah.
And it's actually okay if you can't automate the hardest thing because it requires your intelligence and judgment. Don't worry about because if you try to automate that, it's actually more probable you're going to screw it up.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, what's the role of AI automation in accounting right now? Like, how much of this is hype marketing versus what's really practical and useful?
So the way I think of like automation versus AI, automation follows rules that you provide and define. And it's going to happen over and over again, regardless of what you feed it, unless it's something you feed it breaks it, and then it's not going to do anything, right? I think where AI is different from that is it can understand context, it can help provide suggestions, it can interpret the information and the data, it can learn. So I think there's a role for each, but it depends on where you're looking to utilize them. So if it is calculating your accounting outcomes, probably not an area you want AI to interpret what needs to happen unless you have human oversight, right? There's always that aspect of it. But if you need AI to understand and like maybe do some matching of things, say you go through a reconciliation, your bank reconciliation, that can be really painful. It doesn't take rocket science to understand what needs to happen. What you do need to maybe look at your system versus a PDF versus that came in an email versus whatever it might be, right? But AI can do those types of things. But I think in finance, we are hyper sensitive to the risk it can, which as we should be. But I think AI does have a place, but you just need to be smart about where you're using it versus automation, where you can kind of, I say, set it and forget it, but it is far more predictable in its
Yep.
outcome.
So, I'm going to use automation. I'm going to use AI. I've got these workflows mapped out. I know what I want to do. I think the hardest part is actually getting your team on board.
Yes. Yes.
Because what I've found doing this for now 20 years, being an accountant, and I've gone through, I did it in both public accounting and then corporate finance, where it was like everything was paper. Every invoice you got was paper. Everybody signed off on the thing. And I've seen it evolve to the cloud. I find that most trained accountants are most comfortable with what they can touch and feel, and they can put their fingers on the keyboards and I can control it. The minute you take that away, there's like this immense feeling of I'm now uncomfortable that it's right.
Yeah.
So how do you get your team on board?
So I think, and what I've seen and heard actually in the community a lot recently is there's this threat of my job's going to disappear. It's not going to happen. I think what we're seeing is roles are changing, but change does not mean it disappears. So I think helping anybody to feel like they are replaceable, help them understand the benefits of that change. Like maybe there's less of the boring work. There's more interesting ownership you can take of the information that you're working with. There's more valuable skills now that you can use in your current role and elsewhere. I think there's also the opportunity to involve those people in like the design of what you're doing. And I think just being part of that process does give them a little bit more of that feeling of control that they might feel like they lost otherwise. But those folks are going to know those edge cases and exceptions better than anybody. So involving them in the design will help make it the best it can be, but also it's going to help them feel like they've got some ownership, some accountability. And I think that right there is going to help a lot. And then lastly, like we're at the point right now where I'm just going to say shit's moving fast. This is my whole job to understand automation and AI. And there are days where I feel like I'm behind. So I know everybody's feeling behind, but if you can help to enable the folks on your team to embrace it and learn it and be educated with it, I think that it's going to become incredibly valuable to everyone, including themselves. And I think they're going to feel more comfortable with that change that is coming. But change, again, does not mean that it's replacement.
So the wrong way to do it is build all this cool stuff in a silo and then just tell everybody, here's how it works down.
Never works well that way. I've actually seen it, and it's quite the opposite that happened. Like, it's not good. It's not good.
Super. I think that is the technology's there. The key is how do you get the humans in your organization to embrace it, to get the most out of it and buy into it. And once they do, I think that they will become little setters of innovation themselves, and it will just expand out from there. But that first step's really hard.
It is. It is. It's not easy, but the more you stick with it, the more you do, and the more ownership they have around it and involvement in it, I think that's where I've seen the best outcomes for adoption.
All right. So we do a couple questions, a little rapid fire before we wrap up. All right. Number one, if you could automate one thing tomorrow for every small business, what would it be?
I'm going to say bank reconciliations. I know they are like a universal pain, and tech is mature now. So it really could free up like a lot of time.
And it can be done.
It can be done.
It can be done. Good answer. Okay. Number two, where is automation heading in the next 12 to 36 months?
Oh, I'm going to put it out there as an, I think, to like almost be I'm going to manifest this. I think AI agents and where we're headed will help with better integrations. I think we're going to have better systems talking to each other a little bit better. So some of what we talked about with the Excel, or the level of at which we lean on Excel, should get better. We shouldn't have to be exporting data. We shouldn't have to massage that data. We shouldn't have to keep it somewhere else. I really believe in my heart of hearts that we can be able to get to a point where we are not as heavily dependent on Excel.
I thought that 3 years ago, and we're still here.
Yeah.
It's like, he's got like the longest tenure of any platforming that I can think.
It's crazy. It really is wild. So we'll have to check back in.
We'll check back in. We'll see
where we're at. Hopefully we are a little bit outside of Excel.
All right. Last one. Best piece of advice for someone drowning in accounting hell right now.
Stop trying to fix everything all at once. Pick one thing that is causing you pain and fix it, right? Like, I think there is a lot of benefit to just getting those little wins that I talked about are going to start making you feel lighter. And I think then you'll be able to feel better overall and be able to get out of that feeling of drowning. And I also would say don't suffer in silence. There are so many people out there that are feeling the same way. And once you start to talk to them, like Matt, yourself, right? And the folks at Hiline, like, they know this stuff. Like, just talk to people and you're going to start to see a path to do it. If you're sitting behind your laptop and just trying to figure it all out yourself, it's going to be very overwhelming.
Yep. I think that's super well said. And this has been really fun. We could probably do this for 3 times as long. Maybe we'll have you back and we'll do it again. Maybe we should check in every 6-12 months. We'll see where automation is taking us in accounting. Where can people find you and more about OTTO-MATES? Where can they look you up?
I'm on LinkedIn and I love to connect with folks there. We share a lot of things there as well around the OTTO-MATES community. OTTO-MATES is actually on LinkedIn as well. And then you can always go to OTTO-MATES.com and check us out there and join the community. It's free to join. It doesn't cost anything, thanks to our sponsors. And yeah, we would love to have everyone. The more the merrier, and the more we'll have other folks to bounce some ideas off of.
Okay, you'll see me in there soon too. So Em, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for your time. Great conversation, and have a good rest of the day. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much, Matt. Appreciate it.